Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. Before we begin, I want to pay my respects to the traditional custodians, the nation's first people of the land in which I'm recording from, which is the Wadawurrung people. I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Torres Strait Islander heritage or Indigenous heritage, listening to the podcast or watching this on YouTube. Lady Love, so good to have you back. I think it could be my last Victorian recording. I'm down to, I think, my final 7 sleeps here. For those of you who don't know, I've been back in my hometown, Victoria, Melbourne. It will have been a whole month that I've spent here. And so in these last 7 days, really the main reason I'm here, I've completed my auntie duties of helping my sister with her children, which has been phenomenal. Absolutely adored it. And the reason she's needed some extra help is my mum has been away with her partner. They've been caravanning and they're getting back today. In fact, they're getting back really soon. The podcast recording for today has been moved up because it's just always easier when the house is empty and quiet. But they're arriving home a little earlier than what I expected. So I'm so excited for that. And then this weekend, I'm heading up to regional Victoria, where I actually lived for 2 years. When I was at uni, I lived on campus in Bendigo when I was studying law and business, but both my mum and dad are from regional Victoria. And so actually heading up there for my grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary, which is very special and magic. And to have 4 generations together will be really beautiful too. So looking forward to that. And then, my goodness, back home to the sunny coast. I'm so excited for blue skies and warm weather and minimal clothing and predictability and just more time outdoors. And interestingly, some of the things that were grinding my gears a little bit about the sunny coast, the things that, weren't making me sparkle, I've actually come to appreciate even more after spending some time back here in Victoria. And it's been very cool also to realize that Queensland really does, between Brisbane and the sunny coast, actually truly feel like home for me now, more so than Victoria, which is very interesting. I think having my dad in Brizzy and living there for most of last year is super helpful, but it's nice. It's really nice to be so excited to be returning home after the travel here, but also the travel I did in Bali before that. So yay. And I'm just coming out the other end of these sniffles. Last week on the recording, it was only the beginning. So I probably at most experience something like this once a year. So I'm not well practiced at it. I had a very interrupted sleep the other night and I just thought, like, what even is this? So I'm really pleased it's clearing and I'm almost out the other side of it. Okay, let's have this conversation. The topic I want to bring, do you react or do you respond? And I was going to reference this as the nervous system. Like, does your nervous system react or does your nervous system respond? But where we begin in changing this is actually noticing that our nervous system is reacting and then choosing that we want to become a person that learns how to respond to that, respond to a reactive nervous system, and then build the skills and do the healing so that responding to triggering, uncertain, difficult events in life actually becomes your norm. Yeah. So do you react or do you respond?
we're going to begin by talking about the differences between these two things, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a woman say to me, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was reactive. I didn't even know that was me acting out of this fight, flight, flee, fawn response. I just thought I was being normal. I just thought, and by normal, this is interesting that this has even come up in my own language. By normal, I mean, we look externally and what the way that we're behaving or the way that we're responding or the way that we're not coping is really common, right? So anxiety, overwhelm, stress, fear-based living is really common, right? Like if you look outwards, particularly if you're not someone who is yet super intentional about the people you surround yourself with, what sort of content you're consuming on the TV, on your screens, podcasts, radio conversations, those sorts of things. It'll be the common that you see other women in states of overwhelm, stress, anxiety, and fear. That doesn't actually mean that it's normal. Right. But where I'm going with this is it feels normal because it's reflected to you everywhere. And if you don't take the time to be very intentional and prioritize, how is it that I actually want to live my life? And how is it that I actually want to feel in my body, in my soul? Then that will be what is the word I want? The default, right? Overwhelm will be the default. And so let's highlight the differences so that you can begin to get curious, prioritize more of a responsive approach to life as opposed to reactive. So when I'm talking about a reactive person, I don't even want to say reactive person. I want to say reactive behaviors, or a reactive nervous system, because you yourself, my love, are not those things. It is just currently the way you're expressing, right? And you have complete power to shift and change how you're expressing. And so when we are expressing from a reactive space, that is going to look like and feel like, we could describe it as this like boiling over. Yeah. It's this exploding outwards. It might be a shutting down. Or a running away, like just get me out of this situation. I don't want to deal with this. Let me go focus on something else. Or let me just remove myself. Let me disengage. And it can also be when we go into like the fixer or the helper role, of trying to, underneath the surface of that is actually trying to control everything, to make everything okay, to calm everything down, because we don't know any other way to be able to respond to it. So long as things are chaotic and manic and distressing, you also feel internally chaotic, manic, and distressed. When the reality is, we can actually absolutely have experiences in life where there is chaos happening outside of us and we do not feel chaotic internally. So it's that fight, flight, flee, fawn response that the nervous system, it's a stress response that the nervous system switches into. When we are operating from this reactive state, we will have a tendency to either draw people in or push them away in an urgent and rushed way. Right? So if we're drawing people in an urgent and rushed way, that might look like creating drama, manipulation, exacerbating what is actually happening, catastrophizing, drawing people in so that you're not alone in that feeling of distress, or pushing people away in a rushed and urgent way. So maybe creating conflict, being really critical of another person, shutting them down, rejecting their care, rejecting their help, rejecting their perspectives or their experience. And basically, and some of the language that could look like is, oh, I can't cope with this. Just go away. Just leave me alone. These are some of the things that will play out when we're in a reactive state. And also blame. So like finger pointing, and the core focus of where your attention is and where your self-talk is it's going to be external to you, right? So focusing on all the things that are happening outside of you, whether that's people, places, events, environments, and trying to find or pinpoint or repetitively telling the story of how those things are wrong, are bad, are not right, need to change, aren't good enough, don't understand you. And that's why you're feeling reactive. That's why you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, right? So that's a little overview of what is going on when we're operating from a reactive state. The result of this is often disconnection and damage in our relationships that then needs to be repaired, right? So we might say something we don't mean. We might snap or use a tone of voice where even if we said the same thing, but it was coming from a more grounded, calm, heartfelt space, it would have had a totally different message behind it and it would have been received differently. Maybe we make choices that retrospectively we regret or we wouldn't make again, or we can see, okay, that was probably not necessary. That was probably something that I chose in the heat of the moment that no longer now feels true for me now that I've calmed down. Right. So the result of a reactive nervous system is disconnection and damage in our relationships. Yes, with others, but also with ourselves. And one of the ways that can show up is with this stop-start cycle in anything that's meaningful to us. Yeah. Anything we're pouring our heart and soul into, that, we can use the word goal or outcome or vision we have for our life, where we feel like we're leaning in, pulling out, or like dipping in, pulling out. Right. And we don't feel like we can be fully present and actually see and feel the progress that we want to, because there's a lot of chaos happening around it. And there's a lot of triggered states and reactiveness. And the only way that we know to regulate at this point in time is to take a step out, to go back into the known, to go back into what feels more comfortable and easy, until we regroup and then come back and try again. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not super fulfilling. Okay, a little coughing fit on the side there that just needed a little attention, but I'm all geared up with the honey and lemon water here now, which has been my number one companion this week. Let's shift into talking about responding, because the more that we can just little by little grow our capacity to respond instead of react in triggered moments, the more of life we get to hold. And what I mean by that is the more we can actually live outside of our comfort zone without it disrupting or turning our world on its head. And when we can live more out of our comfort zone, well, we get to bring in more and more of what it is that we want in our life, right? More of what lights us up inside, and our capacity to thrive whilst doing that increases. And it is magic. It's one of my favorite parts of life. So responding. Some of the ways that we can identify that we're responding as opposed to reacting is that you'll be able to detect this feeling of calm and finding your center, right? And some of the language that I use around this is it's like you're returning to yourself as opposed to being really caught up and spiraling in the external event or the external facts. And this feeling of calm and being able to find your center, it's something that you'll be able to detect even whilst feeling the discomfort of the trigger or what is happening. Yeah. So it's not that you'll necessarily find yourself in this place, my love, where all of a sudden you're completely calm and completely collected and feel 100% connected to yourself. However, what it can look like is that amongst the hurt, amongst the sadness, amongst the outrage or the anger or the frustration, that you can also feel yourself. And you can also, sense that reconnection back to yourself, that returning to yourself, as opposed to being totally engaged and stimulated and external to yourself and wrapped up in that event, right? And so one of the ways you'll begin to notice when this is true for you is that your language and what you're talking about will change. So if all you're talking about is the other person, the other people, the environment, what was happening outside of you, and there's no reference to, I feel this, or the reason that feels so triggering to me is this, or what I can see I needed, or like how I really wanted that to go is this. So when that language starts showing up internally, not even internally, but even externally, if you're maybe downloading with a friend around this, or how you're writing in your journal, that is a sign that you're shifting into more of that responding and finding your center. Another thing that happens when we're responding to a trigger or a distressed nervous system state is that our communication will also feel calmer, and there will be purposefulness behind it. There's intention behind it. Yeah. And so that takes place, and that happens when we've been able to pause and go inwards and get clear on, what is difficult about this for me? What is it that I don't like about this? What is it that I'm feeling? Right? It's only from that place of introspection that we can actually intentionally communicate, as opposed to maybe flying off the handle or words vomiting out or exploding out that we probably don't actually mean, or even if there is truth in them, we can bring a far more loving and softer approach to those words, and they will still have the same potency and meaning. Understanding, what is happening internally. That is one of the key things about responding that I really just want to highlight. And so when I'm coaching, one of the questions that I'll ask women a lot of the time, and, I have actually inside Reveal and Rise, there's like a set practice which can be used for journaling that actually walks you through questions to help you understand what's happening in a triggered state. And so 2 of those questions are, what's the need that's not being met here? Like, what is it that I need that is not happening in this situation? And the other question is, what's really important to me that's feeling challenged? Yeah. And when we can name these things based on those questions, we start actually using desire-based language. Yeah. So what it is that we do want, what it is that we do need, as opposed to critiquing somebody else's behavior. Yeah. And maybe giving them an itemized report of all the things we don't like about them and that they're not doing well. Because the absolute best outcome that can come from that space is that that person might stop doing those things, but chances are that's actually an automated reactive response on their behalf. Yeah. But they're not going to actually know what you want in place of that. And you won't even know what you want in place of that if you haven't asked yourself these types of questions and introspected. Yeah. And so the results that we get in our life, when little by little we work on becoming a woman who responds to triggers as opposed to reacts out of them, is we get deeper connection in our relationships. And that starts in the relationship with ourselves, which is wildly fulfilling. There is so much intimacy and trust and companionship to be tapped into in the relationship with yourself. And that then expands into the relationships you have with others. We also gain a deeper understanding of our needs. And that is fucking amazing, because when we understand our needs, meeting them begins to become second nature. So how we choose to live our life ahead of any triggers showing up. Yeah. Or separate to, I should say, any triggers showing up. So we're not waiting until we're in a distressed state to give ourselves what we need. Yeah. We don't have to because we've already got the information, right? I know that I value these things. I know that I need these things to feel really good. Yeah. Whether that is respect, whether that is humor, whether that is sleep. Yeah. Whether that is adventure, right? Whatever those values or core needs might be, certainty, love, connection, like feeling significant, feeling valued. Maybe your love languages come into play here as well. When you know what those are, you can actually begin designing your life, again, little by little, making choices about how you prioritize your time, your energy, your love, your attention, what relationships you're pouring into, which ones you're stepping out of. Yeah. So that less things in life will trigger you, right? Because you're operating from this more regulated state. Your ability to respond is more robust. Yeah. There's more resilience in your nervous system and capacity to hold chaos, because chaos is not the baseline that you're working from. It's not your norm anymore. Yeah. And, boundary setting becomes far easier to understand and to follow through on from this space as well. So they're the differences, between reacting versus responding. I also want to talk about why we get stuck in reacting, because there's a few pieces that I see around this, and I feel like naming them might be really helpful for you to begin bringing more awareness to it, because we can only change what we know about, can only respond to what we know about. And so the first is, becoming a woman that can respond to triggers in a regulated way. That requires a lot of vulnerability and a lot of conversations where, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve. And you're letting people see who you are, and you're asking for what you need. And in a loving, kind, and honest way, you're sharing what's not okay with you and what you don't want to have continuing. And you're really empowering someone to understand why that's problematic for you and what it is you want in place of that, and why you want that thing in place of that, why it's important. And you're also putting yourself in a position where, whilst you're empowering people to understand you in this way, you're not attached to the outcome that they have to agree with you and they have to understand you, and that your relationship with them has to remain the same as it has always been. And so, that asks a lot of vulnerability, my love. And that can be something that some people don't want to dance with. They don't want to lean into. And without the willingness to be vulnerable, it will be very hard to shift out of a reactive nervous system. Yeah. Another one is, these techniques that I'm talking about and these skills and tools that we need to learn and that I needed to learn as well. They're new, right? They're often things that haven't been modeled to us. Our parents, it's unlikely that they've got these skills. Otherwise, we probably would too. And probably, if we're somebody who is living life out of a reactive state, like attracts like, so we're probably going to be surrounded by other people living out of a reactive state as well. We're not seeing these styles of communication or these rituals of inner reflection or a lifestyle that prioritizes nervous system care. Yeah. And so this way of being that moves you into a space where you respond, it's not going to be something you're really familiar with. Yeah. It's going to be new. And when things are new, sometimes they're hard. They're uncomfortable. They're awkward. We need to be willing to be the learner and the beginner. And so again, a lot of people just want to do what's easy right now, even though it's not what's easy for the long term. Right? So they're choosing immediate gratification over the vision of the life that they could actually have, and probably, if they're really honest with themselves, deeply desire. And then the other thing that I see here, as problematic as to why we get stuck in reacting, is it's societal conditioning. So I don't know about you, but for me, definitely in the past, especially when I was working in the corporate space, there was a lot of subliminal messaging around, if you make a mistake, well, you could be on the cutting block. Or if you make a mistake, you're not very intelligent. If you make a mistake, that's something to be ashamed of. Yeah. As I spoke about in my last podcast episode, the origin of all of this is childhood. Yeah. To be vulnerable. Yeah. To admit that we're wrong, to apologize for where we've been at fault. Yeah. That is often viewed as an act or a choice that would weaken your position, would weaken your stance, that would open the floodgates for other people to begin picking you apart, or to believe that they're right and you're wrong. And there's a hierarchy and they are now up higher and you are now down lower. Yeah. And there's also this idea that if you show emotion or if you show sensitivity, well, that means you're weak. That means you're a drainer. Yeah, you're so time consuming. You're too sensitive. You're too dramatic. You're too over the top. Yeah, you're too deep. And so again, if we don't have a strong sense of self and society is consistently reflecting back to us that that's what it means, if you are someone who wants to have open and honest communication, if you're someone who wants to create more connection and speak about how you're feeling, then some women are going to choose to opt out of that. And as part of opting out of vulnerability and sensitivity and connection and depth, you opt into a reactive way of living. Yeah. So a few things for you to just ponder and notice there. And a question, I guess, I can give you to go away with around that is, where might this be showing up in my life for me? Those three things. Yeah. I want to round out this conversation by actually giving you 3 ways or 3 focuses, like pinpointing 3 things that will help you begin to move into responding. And I really want to highlight that word begin. Just a moment. Need another sip of the lemon and honey. Because that is where we're starting from, right? When we're a woman that is showing up in this like urgent, chaotic, explosive, boiling over, overwhelmed state, yeah, where we feel like we're not in control and we don't know where to go when a trigger comes up. Yeah. And it's almost like this autopilot programming starts running instead of us being able to consciously choose what's happening. Then we're beginning at the start. And to believe that we can just leap to like the midway point of a skill set to begin responding is very unhelpful, right? We need to build those foundations first, and then the skills just stack on top of that. Of course, it would be ideal if we could just skip ahead and flick a switch and, okay, now I just say these 5 things or like tick these 5 boxes, and now my nervous system is just magically healed and it no longer reacts, it now just responds. But if you're a woman who genuinely wants to sustainably change this so that you're showing up in a meaningful way that is completely different to the reactive state, then a big part of that is starting with where you're at and beginning at the beginning, right? So the first thing we need to do when a trigger comes up, and that I invite you to do, and you might like to grab pen and paper and write down these 3 things. So the first thing is you have to be willing to name, own, recognize that you are actually in a triggered state, that your nervous system is stressed, yeah, and the fight, flight, flee, fawn response has been switched on. Now, some of the reasons we'll want to avoid this are like maybe egoic, right? Well, I wouldn't be feeling this way if they hadn't have done this. And this isn't all my fault. They need to take responsibility for that. Or I don't want to be viewed as less than, or I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be judged. Don't want to be perceived as weak. So it's easier for me to just pretend this isn't happening, or to like grip tighter to I'm right, they're wrong, they shouldn't have done it this way. And because they did, I feel this way, and it has nothing else to do with me, right? So there's this deep ownership that's required, and the ability to name and let that be that you are feeling triggered and that you're feeling overstimulated in your nervous system. The second is you're actually going to need once you've noticed that and you've named that, okay, Like I'm feeling very heightened in my emotions right now. I'm feeling triggered. That's step one. Step two is you're going to need some language to be able to do something with that. And so this language, I talk about this, it's actually a whole teaching lesson inside my coaching program, Responding to Overwhelm, Fear, and Anxiety. I call cultivating the pause. And this is the moment where you really get to choose, am I going to react or am I going to respond? Because it creates a pause, it creates a buffer that interrupts the reactive state and creates space for you to consciously, intentionally remove yourself and go into some of those self-reflective, self-regulating tools and rituals, as opposed to numbing, avoiding, and all of those reactive states that we talked about at the start of this conversation. And so some of that language can look like, quite literally, hey, I'm noticing my nervous system's feeling really stimulated, or I'm noticing I'm feeling really uncomfortable in this conversation, or I'm noticing you can say triggered. I'm noticing I'm feeling really triggered by this topic. Whatever language feels good for you. I feel the uncomfortable. I'm feeling really uncomfortable in this situation. I'm feeling uncomfortable in this conversation is normally a favorite for women when they're beginning. Sometimes that can be perceived as language that's a little less vulnerable and maybe a little bit more understood by others, right? I'm going to need to take a break. Yeah. And I think it's really brilliant to name or give some information about when you intend on returning, right? Because as well as caring for our own nervous system, without sacrificing our own nervous system and without trying to control another person or minimize their ability to care for themselves or fix them, we want to be loving and kind and considerate to their nervous system as well. And so whilst we're feeling uncomfortable and we need to take a step back and cultivate that pause, that in and of itself, us retreating in a conscious, loving way, can absolutely be enough to then trigger the other person and send them into a triggered reactive state. And so by naming when you're going to be coming back, that is something that allows them to feel more certainty, allows them to know you're still invested in resolving this or returning to this. And it's going to look different based on, right, whether it's like an intimate relationship or a close loved one versus a colleague. Because with a close loved one, it can go like this. You could say, hey, I'm just noticing in my body, I'm feeling really uncomfortable and quite stressed. And for me to be able to continue to engage and, I really want to resolve this, I actually need to take a break. But, just give me a few hours or give me until the rest of today. And I want to come back and I want to finish this conversation with you. And I love you and I'm not going anywhere. And I'm definitely going to come back to this conversation. But right now, I just need to take a break because I can tell I'm going to start feeling even worse. I'm maybe going to start saying things that I don't mean. And I want to be really clear and I want to be really calm and loving in this piece of communication. Yeah. So the example I just gave you then was around a loved one, and it might have a little, it might be a little bit more direct and have a little less of the I love you if you're having that conversation in a work, corporate, colleague scenario, right? So that's the second, is that we need to empower you with some language to cultivate a pause, to give you an opportunity to step out of the reactive triggered state and begin exploring the triggered state and understanding the triggered state. So I'm not suggesting that the trigger is going to stop just because you remove yourself. There is then some work to be done. Right. And that's the third piece, is we need to empower you with self-soothing tools that heal as opposed to self-soothing tools that numb. Right. So self-soothing tools that heal could be, the guided practice that enables you to know how to connect with your inner child, your little girl, who in that moment is feeling judged, is maybe feeling like she's done the wrong thing, she's upset somebody, she's being told off, and that means she's not good enough. It means she's not lovable. It means she's failing. And she's freaking out, right? She's having this internal tantrum that she's about to be rejected. She's about to lose love and connection, that she should be ashamed because she hasn't shown up good enough. She's not valuable enough. She's not significant or worthy enough. And that this person she loves is about to leave her and she's going to be alone forever. And so if you have the tool to be able to create this dialogue and connect with your inner child and begin healing and reparenting her experiences, that's completely different to needing to go and emotional eat or scroll on your screen or get onto a dating app or dive into work and create all these extra projects or all these extra deadlines and using that to numb out, right? Avoiding getting great sleep and downtime because that's when you have to be still with yourself and that's when this stuff comes up and you don't know how to cope with it. So you just have to avoid going to bed until as late as possible, and resting and having downtime or holidays or taking breaks just aren't even available. Yeah. Maybe the self-soothing tool that allows you to heal are certain journaling prompts. Yeah, I mentioned some before that actually help you to go into the trigger and understand it so you know what you need to come out the other side of it. Yeah. Maybe the self-soothing tool that heals is different intuitive movement practices or attunement exercises to your body and to your subconscious so that you can sit with emotions, name them and feel them and help them to release and understand what they're there for in the first place so that they don't actually need to keep cycling, right? Because the only reason painful emotions show up is because there is something really important to you that your body, your intuition, your soul, your subconscious wants you to pay loving attention to. And when you hear that message and when you understand what it is that's being asked to be paid loving attention and you follow through on that, the purpose of the painful emotion is gone, right? It doesn't need to keep showing up as a form of communication from the body. The body can't speak English. So it speaks to us through painful symptoms, painful emotions, right? Because that gets our attention. When we go in and actually understand that because we have a skill set to do that, the purpose is dissolved. Yeah. That symptom and that emotion doesn't need to keep showing up and cycling anymore. Now, does that mean you'll never have symptoms or emotions again? Absolutely not. It's part of the human condition. It's part of the experience of being human. But the depth and the diversity of the messages and the wisdom your body is bringing you will get to expand over time. Yeah. So they're three really important starting places. You need to be able to name when you are in a triggered state and identify, to an extent, what is the event or what is the thing that's happened that is causing this stimulation in my nervous system. Number 2 is having the language and the skill set to be able to cultivate a pause so that you can interrupt that and actually go and work with it. And then the 3rd is having the tools to be able to go and work with it so that you can self-soothe and heal as opposed to self-soothe and numb because you don't know what to do with that trigger or pain or discomfort. Okay, love. The question at the start of this conversation was, do you react or do you respond? And, my hope for you after moving through this podcast episode is that you have a lot more clarity on where you're currently sitting, but also what you can do about that if it's not feeling fulfilling.
Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.